ABSL Summit. Beyond Tomorrow. Building a Sustainable Future.
According to ABSL strategic foresight, our sector in Poland suffers from a severe shortage of talent pools as the main challenge will shape the sector's future. Poland shouldn't be a competitive advantage only on the already available talent and assets, otherwise the role of Poland globally will decline. Let us unlock upskilling and reskilling as a way to get ahead of tech changes with our panelists. Anna Berczyńska, Executive Director at Schaeffler Global Services Europe and ABSL Talent VP as a moderator. Along with Izabella Khazagerova, Global Head of Talent Mobility, Redeployment and Future of Work Solutions at LHH. Francine Nedelcoux, Head of Human Resources at BNP Paribas Securities Services. Kamila Słowik, HR Business Partner Director at Softserve. And Andrzej Pacek, Head of Natwest Poland. Welcome on stage.
Please take your seats. Welcome to the panel. I hope you still have some energy saved from yesterday's party to get us inspired by reskilling and upskilling as a way to get ahead of tech changes. So perhaps the greatest gift of pandemic is actually, despite its global aftermath, that we had time to rethink our operative models and position ourselves towards the future as the business and, of course, humans, individuals. So definitely the future of companies lies in collaborative models, enhancing internal and external upskilling, reskilling schemes. And definitely in that context of talent crisis and constraints that we are all facing, reskilling, upskilling becomes really a huge topic. And I want to reinforce it with a little bit of facts and figures. It wouldn't be me if I don't do that. According to the latest ABSL report, we know that 60% of our companies already plan to implement reskilling and upskilling schemes. And on the other hand, our employees, like 69% of population, wants to develop their digital skill set, which means that we are actually on the safe side and we both think the same. Nevertheless, we also face a big, deep trust crisis towards organizations, corporations, politicians, regulators. And I was really surprised to see in the latest Edelman's Trust Barometer report that, on the contrary, business leaders become one of the most trustworthy people in that global trust crisis, and along with, let's say, social media, new channels, and making an impact. So, looking broader, and that leads me to open up our discussion. The new normal and its challenges definitely need to oscillate around agile, flexible, talent operating models. And with that, I want to address questions now to you, and let's get the discussion started. So I was wondering, as we operate in the silos organizations, so we are quite divided, and we are talking about similar soft skill set, digital skill set. So how can HR really navigate through the silos and create and then execute effective, adaptable talent operating model, and what needs to happen in HR to really help to drive that kind of transformation? Maybe looking at Francine, I will start with you.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased and happy to be here, and I just want to say, yesterday someone said that you live in Gdynia, you work in Gdansk, and you party in Sopot. But now, at almost 5 years living in Poland, I've partied in all 3 cities, and I find they're all great. So I wouldn't segment it that way. Yeah, to an extent, I think HR has always been an enabler of upskilling and reskilling strategies. I think it's part of our craft, and it's part of the function and the value that we add to companies, and we've always had traditional mechanisms to do that. Training plans, training catalogs. Some companies have enhanced those and had more sophisticated mechanisms for upskilling. Mentorship programs, talent programs, career pathing programs. When it comes to reskilling, HR has also, or HR and companies had already started to really, I feel, dip their toes to an extent into this concept. I mean, even pre-pandemic times, we were already talking about cross-skilling, cross-training. We were talking about job swapping, really piloting this new concept of transitional mobility of positions. So I think what the pandemic really brought about was this notion of rapid change in a very, very compounded space of time. And with that, it opened a whole new consideration for building these operating models. Where I see HR has a role to play is primarily three points, I would say. You can probably break it down, but I'm going to leave it at 3. The first one is, and we heard a lot about it yesterday, as companies are emerging from the pandemic and they're reevaluating workspace and particularly work culture and values and purpose, HR will also have to articulate into that vision and strategy a culture of continuous learning. I think it's going to be something that companies will have to really embed into their culture, that it won't be a one-off training plan or a personal development plan or a 3-day training course. It really has to now move towards a culture in which employees and managers are recurrently learning, and that will have to embed into the company culture. Second, and this one is the big one and probably the most difficult one, it will be for HR in the business to analyze and identify the skill gap. So we already do know a few of those skills that we will need in the future. Obviously, the hard skills, the tech skills, the digital literacy skills, and all of that. But what the pandemic has shown is that there's a whole new set of skills that we will need to learn in the environment of tomorrow, and learn them quick. And it goes through resilience, adaptability, managing remotely, motivating teams when you're no longer in an environment, a work environment. And HR will have to play a crucial role in helping the business analyze that skill gap, identify it, set up the proper frame to build these training plans along those lines, and measure them, measure how it's going to work in that environment. And the third one, which is probably an obvious one, is HR will have to enable and help the change management process, which I think it's already something that we're living constantly, but will even be more so apparent as we move into this continuous learning culture, because not just managers will have to embed that in how they manage their teams and how they promote development and help their team members progress and potentially move, but I think employees themselves will also have to rethink what they understand as development for themselves and what their role is to play. It will no longer be, oh, I join a career path and I go this way. It will have to really, for them, also be a change process in which continuous learning will be something that they will need to adopt and embed into their employee journey.
So it seems, Francine, that to put it into pragmatic solution, like on the run, continuous learning through career coaching leaders and self-aware employees about what their strengths are, what the weaknesses are, and where they can really thrive through the support they will get on an ongoing basis, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Looking at this daily habit of upskilling, what's better, I would ask myself and you guys, is it better with internal academies or external programs, or maybe a hybrid? Maybe I will start with Andrzej.
First of all, good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here. And the first question was to HR. I'm not HR person. And I heard a lot of very good hints what's supposed to be done in a business to properly run it and make it future-proof. Yeah, but the question is how to make it happen. So coming back to practical solutions. And academies are one of those tools that we have at our disposal. And obviously, we can run them internally, we can send our employees to external companies, we can build partnerships. And if the question is raised, what is better? I would say it depends. And even from our experience at Natwest, we explore each and every possible option of those choices. So we have something that we call Natwest Academy, that is a collection of various academies, including Data Academy, when you have, again, number of streams dedicated to specialized roles, whether it's kind of data acumen for people in business. We call them data translators, so they are able to understand what actually this data means and interpret it into insights and actionable thoughts. There are also highly technical courses for people who will be data engineers, data analysts, or data scientists. And other domains are building up their own academies, like even in fin crime space. This is something that is happening as we speak. And this is something that we do internally, but we are not able, we are the bank, right? So we are not going to be able to build each and every curriculum. So sometimes we bring that knowledge from outside world. Even in Q4 last year, I had a chance to participate in one quarter-long course run by University of Edinburgh, together with around 1,000 other leaders in the organization, to bring us up to speak to what actually this climate change means and what it means from the business perspective. And it was quite intense, and to be honest, when I joined it, okay, I'm going to learn a little bit about how to be more eco. How wrong I was. I was on the beginning of my Dunning-Kruger curve. I was stepping in on a mount of stupid. And when actually, after those 4 months, I found out how much I don't know. Mm-hmm. And in the last 6 months, together with my colleague, we're running sessions for our colleagues in the organization to bring to life the knowledge that we've got and put it into the context relevant for us in our business. And now we are inviting external guests to bring that another perspective. So again, depending on the topic and on the objective that we are trying to address, we pick the right solution to meet that objective rather than going into one direction, because we strongly believe that building something internally is the only one and the best possible way to do things.
Thank you, Andrzej. I think it resonates quite well with what Francine has said, that we need to really understand what talent gap we have and what is the future talent that we need, and then address it for the needs and adjust, and maybe a hybrid would fit best and serve best both areas. With that, then I would like to revert the question. So, maybe Izabella, you can advise us on that. So, what does not make sense then in terms of upskilling?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this provocative question. I'm delighted to be answering this one. So, I would also mention 3 things of where I see upskilling and reskilling programs fail or do not bring as good results as we expect, right? So number 1 is what not to do list, is not if you don't connect your upskilling and reskilling programs with careers. So if you just introduce a program for somebody to learn something, but you do not establish a clear link for people, what it means for them and what they are going to do with this newly acquired knowledge, I should say that I was surprised by one statistics that we learned in our own research, that 86% of people who received career guidance before going to an upskilling program were more engaged with the program and had better outcomes. It's a big number, it's almost 90% compared to those who do not do that, right? I also really liked, in Marta's presentation, she mentioned choice. That's also part of it. If you talk about people's careers, that means giving them the choice where they want to go next, and then equipping them with the skills they need to go next. That really multiplies the motivation. And on the opposite side, you can invest a lot of money into areas people are not interested in or don't have potential in, and that will be lost investment. So the first piece I would mention is that connectivity. The second element is even more important, perhaps. Do not assume that your leaders and managers actually create an environment when people want to learn. We kind of think, okay, so from the HR perspective or the leader perspective, we provide the courses, but the reality is that they're not always supported when they go back to their work environments. Again, it was a bit of a surprising number for me, but even the quote was even more surprising in one of the studies. Only 31% feel encouraged to learn. 31. That means almost 70% do not feel this way. And there was one quote of one of the participants on the study who said, I do not want to have conversations with my manager about reskilling for the fear of seeming incompetent. So the fear that I will look bad if I admit that I don't have skills I need for the future. So we have a lot of work to do in our managers, and maybe building what Francine, you said, the culture of lifelong learning and making that commitment and talk about it, and then educate our managers and leaders how they need to support people throughout their careers, how they need to become career coaches and encourage the learning that needs to happen is a big piece. And I think that's where we probably fall short most of the times. So the career choice, the support of the leaders and managers, and then making sure that there is a clear connection between the learning and the career outcomes. I also should say it would be good to measure the outcomes well. It would be good to take into consideration people's aspirations, as I mentioned, and then see the programs through and the investment or the return on investment they deliver. Mm-hmm. So yeah. That's what. And maybe one more thing I wanted to add, which again is a slightly interesting point. When we talk about lifelong learning at conferences like this, what always surprises me that the first thing we think about is how we continue educating younger generations. I think what we actually forget very often is the people, our own associates and team members who are a little bit more senior than that. And I think it's it's a mistake to ignore those populations and just focus on millennials or Generation Z and so on and so forth. What we discovered through scientific studies is that actually older generations can learn skills as well as the younger generations, provided that they have their kind of learning muscle trained, provided that they have the habit of learning already. So when we talk to organizations that say, look, we actually do have this population, they're of a certain age, we're not sure they are good for the future just based on the age, we really need to fight those biases that exist with us and give everybody an equal chance to fulfill their career dreams no matter the age, and be prepared to reskill and upskill people of all ages into different roles.
Mm-hmm. Quite discouraging to hear only 1/3 of employees feel encouraged, right, to develop. But on the other hand side, from the statistics and measurements that you have just described, Izabella, we also know that we need to help leaders really to simulate on the operational level the thinking and the career coaching. And I am quite inspired to hear that the aging generation of employees and let's say the new generation can quickly adopt and reskill as fast as the young ones. Very, very encouraging. And the connectivity aspect that you've mentioned in the beginning is very much interesting. And Andrzej, would you like to provide any examples from the managerial perspective to that aspect?
So Izabella did a very good job in prepositioning what not to do, but I like the fact that you started with not assume. And you can put a lot of things later on, like not assume that people are not fit for reskilling, upskilling because of their gender, of their age. That will be a couple factors. Then not assume that everyone will be willing to pick up on all those brilliant tools given by learning and development teams, because around 30% of the people are actually feel encouraged. But maybe you have the answer to that question, whether how does statistics compare to pupils and students? Whether employees in the companies are different from that, or if you would ask what is the percentage of pupils and students feeling encouraged to study? Do you know the number?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know the number of students per se, but what I know is that if you ask people irrespective of their work life, so they do not feel encouraged by the managers, but then we ask the question, would you like to pick up new skills and develop and so on? So you don't feel encouraged, but do you want to do that? And the overwhelming majority of employees are saying yes. So this is a paradox. On the one hand, people want to develop, as was mentioned at the beginning, leaders want their people to develop, so HR definitely want people to develop, but the outcome is not always there. And part of it is those barriers that leaders do not know, for example, how to support their people. They do not always know that their behavior discourages people from learning. For example, I think in a Adecco study, more than 50% of managers and leaders admitted that they struggle to have career conversations with their people. It's just new. They don't, very often the only two career conversations people have is when they get hired and when they get fired or decide to leave. And that's sad, that's not the case. But we also need to support our managers in knowing how to have those conversations. And most of our internal processes for HR are also kind of geared towards hiring externally rather than promoting those internal people and career paths. So even the fact that we don't have skills as currency when we talk about jobs, we actually talk about previous experience. Like, if you want to get hired for this position, have you done that before? Well, instead of doing that, we need to start talking about transferable skills, adjacent skills, and all of that needs to happen so that people actually feel more encouraged and they can develop and they feel they don't feel fearful of admitting that they don't have a skill, because it's normal. We are not supposed to have all the skills now. They develop a lot. So I think if you are trying to understand whether people in general have motivation to learn after they leave university, they absolutely do. It's just those barriers that almost, in my view, prevent us from being effective.
So I was wondering whether this 30% is simply the reflection on human nature, or reflection on how we manage people in respective workplaces.
I was just going to really rebound on what Isa was saying, and I think that is something that is an identifiable skill gap today, is managers being career coaches. I mean, that itself is a skill that we need to develop in our framework, because you're right, managers, to the best of their abilities, don't really, I sense, have the ability to have meaningful career discussions or know in which way to guide their employees, and sometimes, quite frankly, are afraid to let them develop or move onwards or sideways. So really, that is a skill in itself that for leaders will be crucial in the coming years, because if you are going to embed a lifelong learning culture, your leaders have to be the promoters of it. They have to be taking that culture into their conversations on one-to-ones with their employees.
And Francine, so let's step back and put ourselves to what you have just said, and I'm looking at Kamila now. If you were a manager, so would you say that, okay, let's put the barriers and limitations that you always have in your organizations, and do you think is upskilling only for high potentials and on the contrary, reskilling only for the ones that are, I don't know, in the roles in the field of that are going to disappear? Or what do you think, Kamila? What would you advise being a leader?
Thank you, Anna, for that question. Hello, everyone. So actually, this is a question about the talent management. And the talent management is that we have a person and we are trying to shape that person according to the business need that we have. Is that correct? No, it's not anymore. So this is the past. So what we are doing right now, actually, is that we have a person and we are trying to identify his or her talents that will fit to our organization. And this is the role of HR as well. So it's called like an intelligent assessment and diversity career, because on the one hand, there is an employee or external candidate that we put a lot of different tools to investigate his or her talents. And then also we involve even artificial intelligence into that process, as well as interviews with the human way. And we are trying to fit the person to the organization. And what is actually the most important is that in many companies with a certain scale, there is no issue to find a proper position for the person. But what is also important is that choice. That the person has a possibility to choose the path. So this is on the one hand in terms of reskilling part. In terms of hypo, I have a feeling that this is important also to understand that our talented people, they just demonstrate inner urge to learn, inner desire to develop. And what we need to do, it's quite easy actually. So just build the environment for them to grow and invite them to live together. But it sounds easy. This is what we are seeing right now. This is the management, this is the leadership responsibility, and it is very much crucial nowadays. So we just need to remember that if we have a question about is it worth to put in attention to reskilling and upskilling people, we just need to know that evolution already proved that it's not the strongest who will survive, it's not the fastest who will survive, but the one that is most adaptable and the one that is able to work with others, to collaborate.
Very inspiring. And that leads me to the last discussion aspect that I think it's very, very important for the audience and for ourselves to really brainstorm a little bit together on the strategy side, right? And the sustainability, long-term development and long-term competitiveness of organizations and individuals. And I would like to ask you, what are the key challenges for HR when it comes to sustainable talent operating model? And maybe with that, I will turn to Francine first.
I mean, I think from a sustainable perspective, obviously, we've heard a lot about working with governments, working with academia, working with our communities to really be able to have an impact in that environment. The talent pool is decreasing, so we will need to identify new pools of talent, and we will need to be able to work with the actors of that environment. So I think for HR, it will be a kind of an enabler or a challenge, but also a crucial part of the strategy is to really identify those levers, the levers in government, the levers with universities, the levers with communities that will allow us to tap into that talent pool, into that potential.
Mm-hmm. Very rightfully said. Again, the connectivity aspect and seeing the talent pool in the bigger, broader ecosystem, right? And Andrzej, from your business perspective, what do you think about sustainability as the talent enhancer?
And you ask about the strategy, and I'm a firm believer in a quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And we already discussed what should be done. We already discussed the model, but the trick is how to make that model and that idea operational, how to put it into practice. And actually, we need to win people's hearts and minds, right? Because in the end, I believe that those who will be picking up on all those great things that are already available will be people who are already having open mindset. But those who are still in a fixed mindset mode, they'll be waiting for something. So, and I believe it's HR job to figure out how to get to those people, how to get to those minds and hearts of those people who don't see that opportunity yet. So I believe we need support from HR to understand how to sell that story properly, and also how to build a reward and recognition system around that. So it's supported systematically by the organization. So it's not just story to tell in the conference, but actually we can practice that on a daily basis while we are managing people through the life cycle in the organization. Coming back to the sustainability question, whether it's better to invest in people that we have or look externally, and how far we're supposed to be looking into the future. So first of all, looking into the future is like looking into the crystal ball, right? So we're trying to guess what that future might be. And sometimes we are right, sometimes we are not. But I believe we're supposed to be looking forward, especially in communities like this one, so community of leaders, because our people are actually here to deliver on our expectations and on the objectives that we give them. And it's our job to figure out what will be needed in 1, 2, 3, 5 years' time, and make the proper choices and investments. And I'm pretty sure it's always worth to invest in people, but there is also a trick. They need to be willing to pick up on that investment. And if I would be having a choice whether it's worth to retain someone or get someone externally, the first question is if that person is willing to stay. Because if not, I can do a lot of stuff around that person, and from the remuneration point of view, from the career development perspective, but it's not going to work, because that person will be simply closed for all those things, and will not even see them as opportunities. And most probably my effort and time will be wasted as well. And also I believe it's important for us to look optimistically into the future, because quite often we are scaring ourselves with stats. And we, in the presentation done by Amazon, we heard about robots, and quite often when we talk about RPA, automation, robots, the first figure that is quoted is how many jobs will be threatened by those jobs. And even in our organization, obviously we can count opportunities for RPAs and automation teams in thousands of FTEs, but I'm not hearing internally quite often the figure how many jobs will be created in the same period of time. And that is counted in dozens of thousands. So it's a couple times higher, so demand for new jobs that we are not really sure what they will be, but we know potentially what type of skill set they will require. It's much, much higher than the demand for automation, what we already know can be automated. But still, we are sticking on this thread, what we are going to lose. And what we are going to lose is something that we do today because we are not that keen, or maybe we are afraid to look. Actually, maybe that in the future, that will be brighter for us, but simply we need to embrace it.
And with please, Izabella.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I can build on a couple of points Andrzej just mentioned. And to your question, you said, what are the challenges? I think that the challenges in my head are actually threefold. It's not just the fact that we don't have enough talent. That's one challenge. Enough talent with right skill set, let's put it this way, right? The shortage of skills. But the second challenge we have is overcapacity of skills we do not need, because that's also a big challenge, and companies solve it differently. But this, and basically these two challenges, the shortage of skills and the overcapacity of skills you no longer need, this is not it's not a new challenge. It's you know, it's been there for a long time. But we used to solve it by traditional methods, like just let's have like a nice outplacement program for those we no longer need, and let's hire externally. But we have a third challenge now, which is the speed. And the speed and scale of change, and that's what makes it tricky. That's why I think if we think about sustainable models, it's not just about, upskilling and reskilling, but it's also internal mobility and building that culture. And then the question becomes, okay, how to do that? Because some people are passive. And we use this, two terms like career activist or career passivist. So somebody who kind of doesn't want to do anything. Although I should admit, like my view is that not many people actually fall in this category. It's about the how we give them opportunities or don't give them opportunities, and how we manage the situation. I'll give you one example. What we discovered through our work with people in transition, both in transition internally, let's say redeployment, when their jobs are no longer there, or career transition externally, that a lot depends on the timing. Basically, if you have somebody and frame the next career opportunity that we really value you, we want to develop you. Now, this is a choice for you. Where would you like to go next? These are the different exciting skills that will be needed in the future. What do you think? Where do you see yourself? That's a different conversation from your job is going away in 2 months' time. You need to find something else. And what we discovered was, if we frame the question like many organizations do, the second version, actually it's only 6% of people are ready to reskill, because it's the wrong timing. When you feel threatened, you just psychologically want to fall back to what you know. So more than 90% of people said, what I want in this situation is not another similar job, even though they know that those similar jobs are going to disappear. So it's not very wise to stick to this, but psychologically it's difficult. That's why I think it's the how we frame it, how we get to those populations. As one of my clients said, like, we have an expiring workforce. That's a horrible term. But the question is, okay, how do we get to people? How do we show them the opportunities and get them from feeling threatened, quite frankly, into feeling optimistic and being ready to reinvent themselves? That's the challenge I see for HR.
I think this is also about how we perceive a career, because instead of planned career with career paths, with career maps, with expectations and criteria for the promotion that we are used to very much, we are right now moving into the direction of a fast-track career. And this is a perspective when the employee is performing the job, and if he or she performs as a senior, he or she can be promoted to the senior immediately. So there is no need to go along with all these steps, with all this necessary period of time on the position, just to collect the proper number of years on a certain level that you can be promoted further. So right now we are in that fast track career that everyone can be promoted quite fast, but actually the direction that we are going is an agile career. It means that anybody can move to any position, and it happens all the time, actually. What is also important here is that the only thing that is needed is that person has a proper capabilities, competences and willingness, and we are talking a lot about this willingness and possibility to choose right now. So this is, as we are talking about the challenges, this is the main challenge that we need to learn how to do that and how to adjust to that fast situation, because the speed is important here. And on the one hand, we have a business need. We need to identify, as a company, the needs, technology-wise, competency-wise, and on the other hand, we have an employee and his or her aspirations. And the role of the companies and HR supporting here is to match one and another. This is the perspective of that human-centric approach, that we really build an environment or like ergonomic and ecological processes centered on human beings. So
and
This is
With
important
that,
right now.
I want to conclude before I go with the controversial question, 1 minute per each, and we definitely need to close the panel soon, which I hate to do. But I really hope that inclusivity that you are talking about will also help improve the social exclusion aspect of people from small cities, people with disabilities, people who couldn't really reach out higher for better jobs because of some limitations. And we can then thrive in the society together with the business, human in the center, and also the ones who have been excluded due to some limitations so far. So now, controversially, starting from Francine, advice, please. Reskill or dismiss? What's better?
Okay, well, I'm a firm believer in people's potential. So if my 93-year-old grandmother can learn to upgrade her iPhone and WhatsApp me or FaceTime me from across the world, I am a believer of reskilling, for sure, 100%.
Thank you. Kamila.
I'm from HR environment and from IT area, so I have a feeling that we do not have a privilege anymore to fire. Reskilling is very much important right now. But if still there might be a situation that we need to say goodbye to the person, but definitely not based on lack of knowledge or skills. Because this is our responsibility to provide the proper training. The only way to say goodbye is when there is no proper attitude and no match with the company culture, values, organization part. Or
absolutely true.
Kind of difficult habits.
Izabella?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, obviously reskill is the first piece. We need to get rid of the barriers that currently exist and actually allow people to reskill. But I'm also of the opinion that sometimes maybe the best idea is to go outside of the organization for the next career move. And I'm not sure we should always think about it as dismissing. It's just building the career somewhere else. And maybe it's about building the ecosystem of partner organizations that people can continue their careers in, or they may want to become a contractor, for example, which is all good. So I kind of feel that there's reskill, there's dismiss for right reasons, and there are all the options in between where the next career move outside is also an exciting, amazing next move.
Thank you. And Andrzej?
I will help you with the timing and will be very brief. Retain those who are willing to stay and invest in those who are willing to invest in themselves.
Thank you so much. With that, let me conclude the panel. Thank you for very inspirational, full of hope and good advices discussion.
Thank you.
Resilience, maturity, talents, growth, innovation. The change made us stronger. This all made us sustainable. ABSL Summit. Beyond tomorrow. Building a sustainable future.